What is going on, Rip City? This is the Believe in Blazers podcast presented by Bet Online. I am your co-host, Steven Vaughn, and with my co-host, Torey Jones. Torey, what is going on, man? Blazers lose a couple games, but, still positive, right? Still having a good season so far. How you feeling?
This is why they won games to start the year, so that they could absorb an injury loss with Dame and try and make it out of November with a 500 record. Expectations got raised, but now it's back to what I was saying before the season, which is you try and come out in November with a 500 record. Blazers going to be without Dame. We'll see how they do.
Yeah, the Dame injury, I don't know how concerning it is, but it sucks that he's hurt because, he's so good. He's having such a good season. And yeah, the expectations have been raised, even in my mind. Even the, the quote-unquote hater of the group here, me, who I thought was going to be the 10 seed, I've raised my expectations. So, a little disappointing that they lost a few games, but it's okay. But, I think the Blazers will be fine overall with Dame out. But real quick here, let's give a shout out to the sponsors because BetOnline, we love those guys. Just remember, basketball is back and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, golf. We got the World Cup. I'm psyched about that. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BLEAV. That is promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts. Shout out to Bet Online for those guys. Torey, what do you think about the World Cup? You a big World Cup guy? I'm not a big soccer guy, but when the World Cup comes along, it's great. I got a friend he's Chilean, so Chile's not in the World Cup, so they're usually one of my top teams to watch, but he gets me into soccer, so I like the World Cup. What about you?
Yeah, I get into the World Cup 2014. I was feeling the American pride during that World Cup run and didn't make it in 2018. Now they're back, so I'll see. I don't know. I'm not going to try and force myself to get into it. I'll see how much I care when I'm watching the game. They play Wales game one. It's always fun to be united as a country behind a team, so that'll be pretty cool.
That's the best part about sports is and I always said that it's just watch a whole arena cheer as one, right? There's no other problems. Even if you think differently about your team, you guys are all cheering for the same team. I do love that. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not gonna be setting an alarm, but I'll be working. So I work at a sports radio station, 750 Games, shout out. So I'm sure we'll have the World Cup on, so I'll be watching it for sure. But let's talk about the Blazers. They lose 2 in a row. They lose to Brooklyn. They lose to Utah. 2 home games. They Blazers on the season, they were underdogs in basically every game except for 2. And they had such a good record. These last 2 games that they lose, they were actually favored going into the games, and they lose both of them. I'm going to start there with this one, Torey. There's a couple things that have stood out to me, and especially in the last 2 games that have really been bothersome. The first one is, I'm going to talk about Chauncey Billups and his head coaching style. I love Chauncey Billups. I think he's a really good coach. I was buying all the stock of Chauncey last season, even when the Blazers were losing, and I kept hearing, well, he should have been fired, should have hired Becky Hammond, should have hired all these people. No, Chauncey was the guy. He is a good coach. But I want to say this. The last 2 games especially, and especially the Brooklyn game, I thought there are a lot of coaching mistakes out there. And, I think the number one reason was, the Blazers lose that game to Brooklyn on the tip-in by Royce O'Neal. I don't necessarily blame him for not having a big out there on the court at the end of the game, but what I do blame him for is having a Dame and an Ant out there, not having another more defensive-minded player. Dame and Ant both kind of just turned their backs on that rebound. Coaching-wise in the fourth quarter, go back and look at those stats of that game. And the number one problem that I know I had under the Terry Stotts regime was a lot of iso ball, a lot of just bad shots. That's what happened in the fourth quarter. Going back and looking at that game, Damian Lillard 2 for 8 in the fourth quarter. Ben Simmons really shut him down. I was very impressed with Ben Simmons. He was the second best player on the court behind Kevin Durant. And defensively, he made it really hard for Dame. And Chauncey didn't do anything to get Dame easy looking shots. It was all Dame, ISO, all Dame, just running off of screens, either a dribble handoff or pick and roll. Couldn't get open. I thought the offense got stagnant. And the same thing happened against the Utah game. Offense got stagnant, And then that third quarter, a lot of just breakdowns defensively against Utah where it was just layup after layup after layup, and the Blazers were not rotating, not doing anything. And I really feel like those two games were the first two times I said, Portland didn't play well, but Chauncey didn't really coach well. He didn't make any adjustments that I liked. What's your take on that?
I think situationally was where I was the most frustrated with him. Down the stretch in close games with Brooklyn, as you said, Dame and Ant in there. Why are they in there on a final defensive possession? And a possession where you need a rebound. Put some length out there that can help get a rebound, not Dame and Ant. And it's funny, on that play, Dame and Ant were the two guys on one side of the court trying to gather that rebound, and Royce O'Neal just goes over them. So that's bad situational coaching there. But then the last game against Utah, man, down the stretch, they have Drew Eubanks in, and they're switching everything the final 3-4 minutes. Either put in a switchable lineup and then switch everything, or if you really want to keep Eubanks in the game, don't switch him on to Jordan Clarkson, because you never want Drew Eubanks on Jordan Clarkson. And you could tell during that stretch too, Utah was just running Jared Vanderbilt, who Eubanks was initially guarding, up towards the ball and setting a token screen, knowing the Blazers would switch, and then just ISOing the mismatch with Jordan Clarkson against Drew Eubanks. And it was frustrating because after it happened a couple times, me and my guy Eric over on Blazers Uprising were doing a watch party stream, and I said before it happened, watch, they're going to run Vanderbilt up to set a screen, to get a switch, and then attack Eubanks. And they did it and scored. And that type of stuff, for me, is more frustrating than anything else, because it doesn't make sense to have a non-switchable lineup out there in crunch time. You could go small with Nasir Little, who shot the ball well. He only played 10 minutes for whatever reason. You could put out Sharp, Hart, Winslow, Grant, Nasir Little, some combination of those guys. All those guys are switchable. The biggest player for Utah in the game at that point in time was Lauri Markkanen, who Josh Hart was guarding for a big portion of that game anyway. That could have been your shooting guard on their center, right? So you could have put out a switchable lineup. Instead, it was just switching Drew Eubanks onto guards, and Utah picked that apart. The Blazers had a 1-point lead against Utah late in that game that they probably shouldn't have had. They were down 19. But then it was just the bad situational defensive coaching. They were up 1, and then they gave up a 3 to Jordan Clarkson, and then they gave up an and 1 because of switching. So that was extremely frustrating. And then the final possession against Brooklyn, that type of stuff swings games. You get a couple stops there against Utah, you probably win that game. You put in the right defensive lineup that can get a rebound, you go to overtime, you could definitely win that game against Brooklyn. We could be talking about this team winning like 6 of 7 games if things were just situationally better. And that's with some other struggles earlier on. So I think it's just, it's frustrating because this team can struggle with certain things. Dame can struggle and they can still be in games. But when it's silly situational mistakes late in games, that's where I get really frustrated with coaching. And Chauncey, unfortunately, has had that happen the past 2 nights. And then even going back to Dallas, keeping Eubanks in against a small lineup that got picked apart in crunch time. So unfortunately, that's a theme we're starting to see.
Yeah, Jordan Clarkson in that minute stretch, he went on an 8-0 run, or not 8-0 run, but scored 8 straight points by himself. And even on the TV broadcast, you heard Calabro yelling. Roy Rogers is up yelling at the defensive, what they want to do on defense. And it was just an easy switch, right? Like, you were totally right. It was just a switch with the Eubanks, and then Jordan Clarkson went to work. I mean, that 3-pointer he hit, the Blazers had the lead. It was 108-107 with just under 2 minutes. Clarkson gets a switch on Eubanks and just casually Drainos that 3, man. And it was just like, man, like, you got all the momentum at that moment. You're up with under 2 minutes left after Simons hits the 2 free throws. And then you give up a walk-up, 3-point pull-up jump shot to Jordan Clarkson, who is a really good player. Like, he's going to take that shot if you put Drew Eubanks on him. So I'm with you. We're going to talk about Drew Eubanks in a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, just the defensive styles, I thought it was a lot of switching, a lot of laziness. And this was the one thing I was, you asked me the other episode, like, what I feel like isn't, sustainable for this team. And one of the things I said is just the way that they're playing with effort. It's almost like they were out to prove that they're actually good, because last year was so bad. I don't want to say that it's starting to happen now, but sometimes, and I thought especially in the third quarter against Utah, the effort just wasn't there defensively. Like, they weren't rotating. They were just letting guys get easy layups. And I think that's the one thing that I'm worried about is as the season goes on, because it is a long season, are the Trailblazers just going to have a lot more of those lulls where they give up easy layups, easy jump shots, and that sort of thing. The first 10 games, they weren't doing that. They were playing hard for 48 minutes. Last couple of games, there's been lulls for sure. But I think Chauncey has to do a better job, like you said. Switch up the defenses, but at the same time, don't just switch, right? Like, switching can work in certain situations. I like Eubanks in certain situations, but at the end of games, try to get your best defenders out there on the court. Try to get your best rebounders on the court in those spots. So yeah, you're right. Chauncey made a couple mistakes, and I feel like those last 2 losses were on Chauncey. And I think that he probably knows that, and he's going to get better from it. Do you have any worries or thoughts that maybe Chauncey, we overrated him now as a coach because of that great start to the Trailblazers?
I mean, every coach has their flaws, and Chauncey's made a lot of positive changes with how this team plays and what they're doing defensively, and he's raised the bar not only for what success means for the team, but also what success means for himself, right? If we had a 4-game losing streak to start the year, right, but then we rattled off some wins now, the tone would be different. It's, oh, look how Chauncey's improved. Look at how he's gotten this team playing after they were struggling to start the year and in preseason, right? But they started hot, and now they're kind of going through that struggle. But every team goes through struggles, and I can't be too hard on him when his best player, Dame, has the type of games he's had the past couple of nights, and the Blazers still have been in great position to win those games, despite Dame having terrible shooting performances, right? That's your best player. If Dame's himself, you're winning those games walking away, right? So, in that, it's a Utah team that's currently number 1 in the West. I got to buy some stock now in them, even though I wasn't believing. I mean, they just play really well as a team, and I thought against us, they hit a lot of tough shots. There were some breakdowns, but I also thought, like, out of any game this year, they hit some tough shots. Malik Beasley being one of those guys, that's not a big name, but he had 27. He can get hot. They have guys that can get hot and score the ball, and then they just play well off each other, and defensively, they've gotten lucky. Like, I think I saw a stat where they are, like, really bad in terms of they give up a lot of open three-point looks, but teams shoot the 3rd worst three-point percentage against them, which could just be early season luck. But regardless, you're talking about a team that's 1 in the West right now at 12-6, and you're talking about Brooklyn with KD. Like, Brooklyn hasn't been too good, but it oh man, I wasn't the one who was supposed to be coughing. That was supposed to be the guy who's actually sick. But my whole point is that it's not like they lost at home to the Houston Rockets, Detroit Pistons, like a true bottom feeder. And it's not like he's had Dame. He's made mistakes, but every coach is going to make mistakes. Every coach has their weaknesses. So at some point, there was going to be some mistakes made by him. I'm not down on him. I still think he's one of the better coaches in the league. I still think he's done all the right things with this team. I just think there's things that he has to learn from in the long run, and hopefully these games and these couple losses at home can be a little bit of a learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I still have faith in Chauncey Billups, and you're right. Like, the expectations have changed. I think that the Blazers should try to be in that top 6 before the play-in tournament. I think that's a realistic goal now. And maybe that was me jumping the gun a little bit. I went against my word. I said, I'm going to give them the end of November, 22 games. And I stopped short and I said, no, I've seen enough of this team after their nice start. I believe it was 12 games. And I said, no, I think this team, should be a top 6 team. That's what the goal they should be. That's the expectations now. And I think you got to give Chauncey a lot of credit for that because it's been a lot different. But this is his first real season as a coach. Last year, I've talked about just, it was a fake season. So this year, there's gotta be a lot of things that he's got to work on, got to change. But now the Blazers go on that 4-game road trip, which is going to be a tough one. Milwaukee, Cleveland, New York, and then Brooklyn. Come home for 1, and then back on the road for 2 more. And that's the end, or that's the last game would be the Jazz in December. So that'd be 23 games. I think it's going to say a lot how this team reacts because sometimes it's going to be without Dame. And let's talk about that next now. Right now is Dame, he re-hurt himself with that calf strain. Shams tweeted out on Sunday that he will be reevaluated in a week or two. Who knows what that means? Nobody knows. I mean, that could be he's back in a week. That could be he's back in a month. It could be out for the season. I have no idea, because you know what? Gary Payton has been reevaluated about 75 times this season, and he's still not ready to go. So I don't know when Dame will be back. The reports were it's not as bad as it was earlier this season, so I'm really not super concerned about it, but I think it's a rough stretch to go through right now, heading out on the road again for that road trip without Damian Lillard. Torey, first off, I don't know if you've heard anything about the injury, because I haven't. I've just heard what has been tweeted out, and nothing new, just they've reevaluated in a week or two. Have you heard anything, and are you more concerned this time than you were the first time, or is it about the same?
Well, supposedly he strained a different part of his calf, a different part of the calf muscle group or whatever. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how to explain this stuff super well, but apparently it was something different. So when it happened, it was the same calf, and I was worried, okay, he re-injured it, which meant that they rushed him back before he was 100%. Otherwise, why did he re-injure it? But it seems like that might not be the case. It was a situation where he strained a different part of the calf. I don't know if that's tied together or not, but supposedly the part of the calf that he strained is the part that ties into the Achilles. So this is something that they have to be very careful with. Very careful with. There's no reason he should return until he's 100%. I would wait till he's 100% and then give him a couple more games. Right now they're saying 1 to 2 weeks. Right? It's November 20th as of now. The Blazers play November 30th. That's 10 days from now. Then they have a couple days off in a row. They play December 3rd and December 4th. And then they have 3 days off after that. Then they play December 8th against the Nuggets. I don't think he should return before December 8th. Once again, I'm not a doctor, so hopefully we can trust the doctors on this in terms of not rushing back too soon, but you look at a stretch where they only play 2 games in the course of like 8 days or so. Just don't rush them back within a week or 2 weeks. Like, it should at least be till December 8th, because, this is a tough road trip. You're not going to have them for this road trip, and then you have some games that are actually spaced out after a jam-packed month of November. So it's going to suck not to have them. It's going to be a tough road trip, going on the road to Milwaukee, then Cleveland, and New York, and Brooklyn, who just beat us at home. But in the end, even if this team is 10-10 and goes 0-4 on this road trip, the goal was to be 500 after the end of November. There's a good chance that by the time Dame gets back, the Blazers will have the hardest strength of schedule played in the entire NBA. Right now it's at fourth hardest schedule, and they're 10-6. So yeah, it's tough, but this team has shown up without Dame. They beat New Orleans on the road without Dame. So this team can get it done without Dame. I'm not writing this team off without Dame, but you just can't panic. It can't be a situation where you lose 4 or 5 in a row or something like that, and then you rush him back, and then it gets worse because he's not 100%. So that's where I come back to. You got to make sure he's good to go. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Make sure he's 100% healthy. I don't want to see him on the court before December 8th.
Yeah, you're right. It's a long season, and you could not rush him back. Just small sample size, of course, this season. Dame, in the 5 games before the injury, Dame was shooting 49.5% from the field, 39% on threes. After he came back, so after the injury, he played in 6 games. The first calf injury, he was shooting 35% from the field, 28% from 3. So I think you're right. Like, it's very important to get him right and get him healthy. Like, you cannot have him be hurt. You need him healthy, especially for the long run. Like, if this team wants to make any type of noise in the playoffs, you can't have Dame have a nagging calf injury. So you're right. It's going to be a tough part of the schedule. And like you said, if you said before the season, the first 22 games at the end of November, they're 11-11, I would have said that is a great start to the season. It's just they won so many games to start the year instead of at the end of this break. Like, they start the season, they lose 4 straight. People are really panicking where they won their first 4 games, and then we thought, oh, maybe this team's a lot better. So I'm with you. You got to get Dame healthy. It just sucks that it's at this point of the season, but the numbers even back it up. Like, he had been shooting bad after the calf injury, so you got to get him ready. and ready to go. Speaking of shooting and good shooting, Jerami Grant. I've been seeing a lot of Blazer fans say, you know what, Jerami Grant deserves to be an all-star this season. You even had a tweet about that, going through your old tweets, which is what I do a lot. I go through your old tweets to try to call you out.
Do you now?
No, that's the next segment. That's next segment. Go through Torey's old tweets. But Jerami Grant, averaging just under 20 points a game, 48% shooting, 48.2 from behind the arc. Torey, I want to ask you this question. So in Detroit, he started those 2 years basically. He made 35% of his threes, making 2 threes a game. This year, he's at 48.2%, over 2.5 threes made per game. Over under here, as we did before the season. Does Jerami Grant shoot above, well, I should say over or under 39% by the season end?
I think you got to take the over on that. He shot 35-36% in Detroit, but was taking a lot of threes off the dribble. The 2 years prior to that, when he played for OKC in Denver and was getting more catch-and-shoot looks like he's getting right now, he shot 39%. So the fact that he started at 48%, he'd probably have to shoot, 37%, 36% to get below that 39 mark, like 37-36% for the rest of the season. I would take the over on that. I trust the shooting. I have a theory. I think he shoots better on passes where he can be square to the hoop and catch it from the paint. And the Blazers are really good at tagging the paint and kicking out. I feel like he's the type of shooter that shoots a high clip off kick-out passes, and that could be an explanation why he's shooting the ball so well. I don't expect it to stay at 48%, but I'd probably bet over 40% at this point, so I'm taking the over on that.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up slightly over, maybe not to the 40%, but 39.5, something like that. And I think you're right. I would love to track that. I probably should do that. He does seem very comfortable when it's a drive and kick out and he's in the corner. He's a good catch and shoot shooter, but when he struggles, it's when he's going off the dribble. And you see that lots of times. That Brooklyn game, man, he tried to go off the dribble numerous times against Kevin Durant. That did not work. That Brooklyn game, it was a lot of the ISO stuff that they were trying to do, and he got stuck against Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant. Like, that's just not his game. And I think that was the worry coming in, is like, well, when he was in Detroit, it was a lot of ISO stuff. Can he adjust his game? Yeah, he adjusts his game great, and now he's become this really good catch and shoot shooter, and that's what they got to get him to. And I think that's the part with Dame, that with Dame out, he's been really leaning on Jerami Grant hitting those catch and shoot threes. So that's one of the worries going forward with him. I think you would love to have Dame out there with Jerami Grant, but I think you're right. Jerami Grant has been shooting the ball really well this season. Pleasant surprise, I would say. I think, it wasn't that I was low on Jerami Grant. I just wasn't expecting a lot out of him. I was kind of thought he's more of a sixth man type player. Like, you would love to have him off the bench, but he's proven to be a really good starting player. So I was wrong about that. And it was one of those moves where you just look back on it now, and it was a great move for the Blazers to get Jerami Grant.
Yeah. It definitely helped that Jerami Grant wanted to be here. That move wouldn't have happened without that. So it was almost like a free agent signing in a way. Detroit got that Milwaukee first back, but obviously when you look at that deal, it's a steal. Shout out to Jerami, because he had a handshake agreement with Detroit's front office that they would send him where he wants to go. That was part of the condition upon him signing there, and he wanted to go to Portland. Dame's recruiting finally worked on a player, and it's paid dividends so far.
Yeah, weird. When you go out and you get good players, or better players than you had, you become better as a team. So, good move by the Blazers to Dame. One guy that they added last season that, he put up really good numbers last season, double-doubles all the time, because the Blazers were terrible. Now he has to play because, well, they have no one else to play as a backup five. That's Drew Eubanks. I feel like he's a hot button topic for you, Torey. And when I was outlining the podcast what we want to talk about, I just wrote, what's your problem with Drew Eubanks? And just go off, because I have some tweets that you wrote out. You want me to give you the tweets first, or you just want to give your statement?
Give me the tweets first, and I'll explain the tweets. I will decipher them.
Now, some of them are responses to people complaining about Nurk, and then you fire back with Drew Eubanks. But here's one. You responded to a tweet, a big thread of tweets, and you guys were talking about how Nurk doesn't finish, and you said Nurk is struggling to finish this year, but everything else he does better than Eubanks. I guess that's fair. Did you not watch Eubanks the last 3 minutes of the Dallas game? It's easy to play your ass off playing 12 minutes a game. Okay? Drew Eubanks was some awful minutes to end the third. That was November 17th. That was the Brooklyn game, I'm assuming? Mm-hmm. Yep. The Brooklyn game. Let's see. Someone responded to you. You complained about Eubanks. You said, why the F is Drew Eubanks in the game? This guy says, chill. He was decent. You go, Dallas goes super small. What is the reason to keep Eubanks in the game? Then they just swing and he's too slow gas to keep up and they get open 3 after 3. What is the purpose for keeping him in that situation? It makes zero sense. Another tweet. This was the 19th, so that was the Utah game. This is the Utah game. This is the most recent game. Jusuf Nurkic, +9 in 16 minutes. Eubanks, -14 in 7 minutes. Another one in the Utah game. 4 of 6 offensive rebounds for Utah came from their bench against Eubanks, who had 0 rebounds in 7 minutes. Y'all just make stuff up because you don't know what you're watching. And then the final one, again, was against Utah. Switching Eubanks onto guards to end the game. Good job, Chauncey. Either put out a switchable lineup or stop switching Eubanks onto guards. Now, Torey, I want to say this about Drew Eubanks. I was one of the bigger Drew Eubanks haters, and I thought, oh my gosh, they better not bring this guy back because he is not good. But I will say this. As a backup center, what more do you want out of the guy?
He's fine as a backup center, but
I don't think he's good. But I think he's been good this season off the bench. I don't have a problem with him. And there's times where I think, you know what? He's sometimes not as bad as Nurk. I'm okay with them playing Eubanks over Nurk. And I think that's my problem is Nurk makes all this money and he's obviously better. But I put out the joke tweet of, obviously Nurk is better than Eubanks, but is he better than Eubanks? And I think that shouldn't even be a question. We shouldn't even question it. You obviously don't feel that way. A lot of Blazer fans are starting to think this way. Drew Eubanks, 71% from the field this season. So just go off. Here's your chance to go off and explain.
Ooh, which tweet do you want me to respond to? You hit me with all of my tweets.
I just hit
well, okay.
You told me to get receipts. I got you receipts, Torey.
Well,
so just give me your
throwing
Eubanks.
a lot at me here to respond to.
Just give me
as
your
far as
Eubanks thoughts.
as far as the whole him in the game against a small ball lineup against Dallas, I don't blame Drew Eubanks for that. Drew Eubanks, after he's played 30 minutes and Christian Wood fouls out and Dallas goes small, and then Chauncey even said the game plan was to double team Doncic in that situation, but the other 4 guys on the court with him were Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and I forget the 4th guy, but it was another wing shooter. If your idea is to double team Doncic, the other 3 guys have to be able to rotate and fill in the gaps behind that. If you have your backup center, who has no business being in the game when the other team is small, right? You should match up to their small ball, but then he especially has no business being in the game when you're trying to double Luka Doncic and rotate out to 4 other shooters. His rotations were so slow because he looked absolutely gassed in that game. He hasn't played 30 minutes much. He played 33 in that contest. I don't even blame Eubanks for that. That was a coaching mistake. The whole switching Eubanks onto Jordan Clarkson and that sort of thing, I don't blame Drew Eubanks for not being able to keep up with Jordan Clarkson. I blame Chauncey Billups for switching Drew Eubanks onto Jordan Clarkson as part of their crunch time game plan. We already talked about that. So those tweets might seem like I'm criticizing Eubanks, but it was more so criticizing the coaching. Now, I thought in the first half of the Utah game, I thought Drew was awful. Nurkic was a +9. What was it? Nurkic was a +9 and Eubanks was a -14, I believe it was, in the first half against Utah. I mean, that tweet was just a fact, okay? But I made that tweet for a reason, because it's the moment Jusuf Nurkic does bad, people cannot wait to talk about it. People cannot wait to criticize it. People criticized Nurk when he went 8 for 10. And defensively he was solid, and the team rebounded better when he was in the game, right? After the first half, Nurk was perfect. He was 4 for 4. The bench unit really struggled rebounding, and a part of that was Drew Eubanks not boxing out, not getting boards. He didn't have a single rebound in the first half. And people were out here complaining about Jusuf Nurkic not rebounding well enough and acting like he was part of the problem in the first half when the team played better with him, but Eubanks gets subbed in with the bench unit and the bench unit gives up the lead, right? But then in the second half, when the starters are struggling, and a big part of that is Dame can't make a shot, right? But then the bench lineup comes in and brings it back, then Eubanks is getting credit for bringing the team back when in the first half, that same unit lost the lead due in part to Eubanks not being able to rebound or do anything well in the first half of that game. So my whole point is people cherry pick and can't wait to talk about any of Jusuf Nurkic struggles. And then it's almost become a situation where they don't criticize Eubanks and they can't wait for Eubanks to have a good half or a good stretch so they can say, see, look at Eubanks. Look at how well he's doing. I just think there's too many people in this fan base that has a bias against Jusuf Nurkic. And I don't know if it's just because we've had him for so long, but I guarantee you, if Eubanks was our starting center for the next 5 years from now, people would criticize him as much, if not more, as they criticize Jusuf Nurkic right now. It's just we haven't had him for so long, and the grass is always greener. So that's how I view the whole Nurkic versus Eubanks thing. But I don't know. I want to stop being so like one side or the other with it. They both can be solid. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You have a starter, you have a backup, right? If the backup is playing good, if Eubanks is playing better than Nurkic a game, okay, play him more. Like, absolutely. That applies to any position in any game, right? But I don't know, man. I just think Nurkic gets an unfair shake from fans, and people are too hard on him. And it's just funny to see how Eubanks can go out there and get rim checked on a dunk. You remember that reverse dunk that he got rim checked on?
There was
Don't hear a word about it. Yeah. But if Nurkic did that, what would have people said? He's not athletic enough. This is why you can't have him as the starting center. This is why he needs to be traded. Yada 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 yada.
Well, I would say this about that: Jusuf Nurkic wouldn't even attempt the dunk. He would throw up a flip shot that wouldn't go in. So.
It went in against Utah. Maybe Eubanks should have shot a flip shot and he wouldn't have gotten rim checked. But that's my whole point. Is like,
I know.
Nurkic would have shot a flip shot. Like, he hasn't finished great this year, but to just act like he misses everything is disingenuous.
But he's not a good finisher.
He was a solid finisher last year. He's struggled this year. But against Utah, he finished really well. He was 7 for 9 inside the arc, and he was still getting criticized for it.
I just think overall he's just not a good finisher. And that's fine. Like, I've grown to accept that. I will say, in fairness to Eubanks, he had a great second half. Like you said, he is bad in the first half. The second half was complete opposite. You flip it around. Nurk, minus 14. Eubanks, plus 16 in the second half.
But was that Nurk playing bad, or was that Nurk playing with Dame as Dame goes 1 for 12 from 3 and Nurk playing with the starting lineup? Simon struggled, Grant caught fire late, but I mean, that's the thing is, like, Eubanks came in and played terribly. Like, that's why I pointed out the plus minus, is because Nurkic was perfect from the field, played good. Eubanks came in and I thought in the first half played terribly. The second half, I don't think Nurkic played bad. I just think he was next to guys that were struggling, and then those guys sub out, Eubanks comes in, and then, like, Eubanks is in when Grant and Simons hit, like, 4 threes in a row.
I think that just goes to show you can't look at plus minus and say it's the end all to be all, right?
Yeah, you absolutely can't, but people will do it against Nurkic, so that was part of the point of doing it after that first half. But also it's less noisy when it's like these players have a direct correlation to how the team is doing because they're playing well or struggling. And I think there was a direct correlation in the first half.
No, I think you're right. Nurkic does get a bad rep. I have actually said that lots of times. Like, he gets the blunt of all the blame for the defensive struggles that they've had in years past. This year, different style. Billups is asking the players to do different things, and the defense is actually good this year, right? And I think Nurk has been good for the most part this year. I've given him a lot of credit. I just thought in that second half he wasn't very good, and Drew Eubanks brought him some energy, and I think that's the difference for me, Torey. Like, Nurkic is better. I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying start Drew Eubanks, because if you started Drew Eubanks, this team is gonna start losing a lot more games. He did have more. He had 4 blocks, 13 points. 5 rebounds in the game. He shoots 71% from the field. Nurk's at 50%, 52%, career 50%. And I think that's the problem, is like, there's a lot of times where Nurk, the ball just bounces off his hand. The ball, he gets the ball and he throws up a terrible little shot that doesn't go in. And you're thinking, man, what are you doing? And then you watch Eubanks. He has that nice little jump hook. He always likes to try to dunk because he is a pretty explosive athlete. Like, for being a big, tall, white stiff out there, like, he is a good athlete. And I think that is one of the things that Jusuf Nurkic is not an explosive athlete. Drew Eubanks can jump out of the gym and is pretty explosive getting off the floor.
I think you're over-exaggerating his athleticism a little bit, but Nurkic is struggling to finish, but he's hitting threes, and he's been hitting free throws. It's now down to 77%, but it was at like mid-80s. And the thing is with Eubanks is, if you're feeding him the ball in the post, he's not going to be shooting 72%.
No.
Eubanks gets a bunch of like wide open dunks around the rim. Like if Nurkic just shot the shots that Eubanks shot, they'd probably be shooting the same percentage.
Oh, I disagree with that because I don't think that Nurk can't play that way. So, but Eubanks can't play the way, like cutting to the hoop and catching the basketball. Like that's
you don't think Nurk can catch the basketball?
Not really. He drops a lot of passes, man. He's just not. He can't catch on the run. Like he is a true like I'm gonna post you up and try to just beast you, and use my size and turn around and throw up a little jump hook. Like that's his game.
I mean, we've seen Nurk catch the ball on multiple like roller situations and make a good move inside catching the ball on the run. I mean, I don't know. I don't agree that he can't catch the ball on the run. I think a lot of times the passes are in traffic where he's catching them low and there's guards around him and he can't put the ball on the floor because he has no space. Like, that's the thing, is it's such a tricky thing to analyze because a lot of it, in terms of bigs catching the ball on the run, a lot of it is dependent on where the pass is, who's throwing the pass, and how much traffic you have around you as a big man. So, I don't know, like, it's not black or white. Maybe that's something Nurkic struggles with a little bit more, but I don't like analyzing it as drastic as Nurkic just can't catch the ball on the run.
No, you're right. I over-exaggerated a little bit. Let me ask you this. Again, this is a tough question to answer, and there's really no right answer because there's so many factors that go into it. But overall, in general, who's a better finisher, Drew Eubanks or Jusuf Nurkic? Finisher in the paint.
Depends on the situation. But I would probably say Eubanks is a little better finisher. Didn't I have a tweet that said that? Eubanks is a little better finisher and Nurkic is better at everything else.
I don't know. You did. So,
yeah. So I'm willing to give Eubanks his props for where he's strong.
I think that's my main problem with Nurk is like I just want him to finish better. Like if he finished better, he would be such a better player. That would help the Blazers so much. It's just so frustrating to watch him, but
it's just like that's one thing, man. It's one thing. Like everywhere else, he's been good this year. He's been good rebounding the ball. He's been good shooting threes. He's been good shooting free throws for a center. He's been good defensively. Yeah, I would love for him to finish better. But that seems to be all certain people can focus on. They can't focus on anything else.
We are nitpicking for sure. Eubanks, by the way, is a good free throw shooter as well. You didn't mention that. Didn't want to give him props.
What's he shooting? And what's the sample size? Here, I'll pull up his basketball reference profile.
He's at a nice 69% on the season.
Oh yeah, you very good percentage.
75% for his career.
Nice. I mean, but it was funny because Nurkic, I think before last game or the game before, he was shooting like 85% from the free throw line, and then he goes 7 for 11 from the free throw line, and it's Nurkic can't shoot free throws. Like, that's the type of stuff that just drives me crazy. It's like, he was almost shooting an identical percentage to Ant and Dame going into the game. He goes 7 for 11, man. It's like these people forgot when we had Mason Plumlee shooting right-handed, who was so bad shooting right-handed, he's now shooting free throws left-handed.
Which is insane, by the way. Like, him and Tristan Thompson to switch hands as grown adults in the NBA, it blows my mind.
Plumlee shooting better left-handed, man. It was actually a good switch.
It was, man. I think the thing is here's my final thing on Drew Eubanks. Torey, I was just kind of playing tongue-in-cheek with you. I know you don't hate the guy. You think he could be a solid rotational piece. I still think they could upgrade that position, obviously, but defensively, what Eubanks does is he plays 19 minutes a game and he averages almost a block a game. And those are the type of things that you see. You're like, okay, like, this guy is just being more active, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a better defender than Jusuf Nurkic, where a lot of people just look at defensive stats and take that away, where Jusuf Nurkic is a really good positional defender, and he has been for years. So I think they just play a little bit differently, and it's easy to, to make fun of Nurk and say his downfalls because he's the one getting paid where Eubanks is on the minimum contract, not making any money, no expectations on him, where Nurk has been here in Portland, has those expectations. So those downfalls are here. But I think go for it.
Can I go on a tangent about blocks being overrated though for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Like, people overrate blocks out of a center in terms of trying to analyze rim protection, because how many defensive possessions do Eubanks and Nurkic play a game? Probably, if they're playing 20 minutes, they're probably playing 50 defensive possessions, right? In 20 minutes, so Nurkic probably plays 60 to 70, Eubanks plays 50, right? I'm just spitballing here, just guessing, but somewhere in there, right? And if you're talking about the difference between like 1 block and 2 blocks per game, you're talking about the difference of 1 out of 50, 60 possessions. It's not enough of a statistically relevant stat, because here's one of the things I had a problem with Eubanks in that first half against Utah. I thought there was a couple of times where he was chasing blocks that he had no chance of getting, and then his guy gets an offensive rebound because he chased blocks, got himself out of position, had no effect on the play whatsoever, and didn't make a difference, but got himself completely out of position for a board because he's chasing blocks. So that's the thing, is like blocks are the easy thing to see, and they're fun, and they're energetic, and everybody notices them. But I've seen this with other big men, is big men that get high block numbers, their rim protection can get somewhat overrated if they chase those blocks. Last year we had Robert Covington chasing steals. In previous years, people actually got frustrated with Hassan Whiteside for chasing blocks, right? So that's the point I wanted to make about blocks, is I feel like it's a little bit overrated in terms of a stat.
It's very overrated. I'm 100% with you. That's perfectly worded there, because as a former college basketball player, Torey, I know you get blamed for saying that you played college basketball.
You can talk about it.
I as well was a college basketball player. A lot of times, like, attacking really big people that are good at blocking shots is the best thing to do, because you can pump fake them, you can get them off the ground. Like you said, they will go and chase those blocks. And if you are a player that, like me, who didn't really have a conscience, like, I didn't care if you blocked my shot, I'm still going to attack every single time. Like, that's how the NBA guys think as well. Like, they're not going to get distracted or frustrated with 1 block shot, so it's not going to matter to them. You can get them off the air. It is an overrated stat for sure. And that's the point, is that Eubanks, yes, has done some nice things. I would say he has exceeded my expectations. But he's definitely not the answer. It's still Nurk, but I think it's fun to poke the bear there with Jusuf Nurkic.
Eubanks has been better than I expected too. I'm okay with him being the backup center right now. And I wasn't before the season, so it's just I don't know. I feel like people are too hard on Nurk, so maybe I'm a little too hard on Eubanks for that reason. Maybe everybody should just chill.
Hey, the Blazers are still doing well, all right, guys? Blazers are still doing well. I think you're right, Torey. I think that was big of you to admit that maybe you were a little bit too hard on Eubanks. They're a little hard on Nurk. I am too. I'm just
the type to try and make a point that way, you know?
No, it's all good, man. I just thought that was pretty fun, and it's a fun conversation because. It's like we said, Eubanks has been better than expected. So I was not ready to talk Drew Eubanks a lot, but he's actually playing well enough to be talked about. Last thing I want to talk about, Torey, again, head over to Bet Online, make these bets. Blazers right now, I want you to rank the Northwest Division right now. So the Portland Trailblazers, what's their record? 10-5, 15 games in.
Yeah. Northwest
Division right now, the Nuggets are the favorite, -155. These are all thanks to Bet Online, by the way. Go bet over there. Blazers, or the Nuggets are the favorites, -155. Blazers second place, +400. Jazz +550. T-Wolves +600. Thunder 150 to 1, way behind everybody. Rank the Northwest Division. Is Portland the second best team in that division, or is it they first?
Portland is the best team in the division. Denver has played the 3rd easiest schedule in the NBA and has been healthier than Portland. The one time these two teams faced off, the Blazers beat them by 25. So, yeah, early sample size, maybe things change, but if you're just basing it on this season so far, I don't see any case for Denver being better than Portland. The only way you can make that case is if you thought they were better in the preseason and you're holding on to that, which you can justify a take with that because it's only been 16 games, so it's not, a huge sample size, but if you're just looking at these 16 games, man, the Blazers have played the fourth toughest schedule. Denver, the third easiest. Portland beat them in their one head-to-head matchup so far, and Portland's been less healthy, and they have the same record right now.
Yeah, I would still take Denver. I think just, like you said, it's based off the preseason. It's based off still early. We're not even a fourth of the way through the season. I probably, oh man, like I don't. You said you're buying the Jazz. I don't know. I don't know how much
I'm buying like half a share of, if the stock is like $2.
Yeah, like I don't know how much I'm really like. Are the Jazz really going to be a playoff team? Are they really going to be a play-in team? I don't know. The T-Wolves, I feel like at some point are going to get going, but they haven't looked very good this season. I don't want to say Portland's the second best team in the division, but they might be right now. They are definitely right now, just based off what they've done. But going forward, I'd probably put them third behind. I still think Minnesota figures it out. I'd have Portland at third, but you're right. Like, just looking at what they've done this season, you would have to put Portland number one. They got a shot to win the division for sure. So go over there, check it out, get that money plus 400. Turn that $100 into $400. Be a nice little payday for the summertime when you get paid out, because that division won't be decided till the very end. And with that, Torey, I think we're going to wrap up here. Unless you got anything else to add.
No, I'm just looking forward to going into Monday's game against the Bucks without expecting this team to win. It's a little less pressure for me as a fan.
Yeah, dude, they're putting too much pressure on us. They're actually winning games. We expect things out of them now. It's a weird feeling here in Portland, but we like it. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, rate, subscribe, review, do all those good things that people do. If you want to hit us up, hit me up at Steven_VON on Twitter. You can listen to me on 750 The Game on the BFT. You can listen to me on Saturday and Sunday morning. Bet the Game, 9 to 10 a.m. I talk betting. I throw Blazers bets in there. I throw just Blazer thoughts in there, but it's mostly football right now. But I believe we'll continue it going on later on after the football season. You can catch Torey at Torey Jones YT. Catch him on YouTube. Him and his partner Eric Brandt, they do great things, break down a lot of stuff. They're Blazer Uprise. Of course, check this out, Blazers Uprise live. See the video. So thanks for listening, and remember, this is the Believe in Blazers podcast presented by Bet Online. Want to thank everyone once again. Have a great day.